Good morning, everyone. Meeting in progress. Oh yeah. Good morning, Zoom people. Morning, folks. Thanks for coming out. Nice morning. Not too cold. Not yet, anyway. Like Aiden's got the power on back there, and he's back. We're back in business with the coffee. Thanks, Aiden. Sorry for you. He's the first one here. Morning, Joe. Glad you made it. Have a seat there, sir. Good to see everybody. Well, we got a big morning. We have some special guests again, and a special presentation by Eric Dietrich on these constitutional initiatives. You know, Eric, you asked a good question around here, and we put you to work. So we really appreciate your... He just had to ask that Medicaid question, and he said, Eric's our guy. We'll recruit him. So we've got a lot going on this morning. John Repke's back with us again, and Aaron Ferris-Olson. But anything off the top? Anything as we convene ourselves? Any announcements? Any introductions? Anybody here for the first time? Yeah. Wes, sir.
Good morning, Wes City of East Helena. A couple of things I wanted to invite folks out to this coming week. Coffee with the Chamber. The Chamber hosts a Coffee with the Chamber the 4th Tuesday of every month. And it is on Tuesday, whatever that date is. This coming Tuesday from 9 to 10 at Galaxy Roasting in East Helena. We invite you all to come join. Organizations, folks just come and have an informal visit. In addition to that, the Helena Chamber of Commerce is hosting a business after hours at East Helena High School on Thursday of next week, so a week from today, and that is sponsored by Northwestern Energy, but will be hosted at East Helena High School. So if you have yet to come and visit, we would encourage you to come do so and get to know the faculty and administration out in East Helena. So come on to East next week, please.
Those are great. The coffee thing out there is really fun. It's kind of like this. It's a lot like this. And, of course, East Helena High is beautiful. I got out there to judge a speech meet last fall. And it is a wonderful facility. Really cool. So thanks, Wes. Yes, sir. Annie? Yes, sir.
Just first time here. My name is Paul Summerlin, just a community member. Coming to see what you guys got going on. Thanks for having me here.
All right, Paul. Well, let's welcome you. We have lots of fun. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Lauren Caldwell. It's not my first time
Yes,
in Helena, but it's been quite a while. I've got really young kids, so it's harder to get out. But I'm campaign manager for CI 126 and 127. I know you have a lot of things on the docket today, so I'm excited to hear about everything. But just in here in case you have additional questions afterwards. Happy to help answer additional questions. Thanks.
Very good. Good to see you again, Lauren. Thanks for coming. How's the kids? All right? All right. Very good. And Danielle joined us. Good to see you, Danielle. Got something?
Hi, I'm Danielle with Grand Street Theater, and we are heading into our last 2 weeks of shows with The Woman in Black and Ken Ludwig's Moriarty. If you haven't seen them yet, we had a sold-out house last night, so get your tickets now. We have a spooky Halloween show and a wonderful comedic adventure with Sherlock Holmes. So get your tickets now.
My niece came down from Missoula, saw Moriarty. I guess it was great. She said it was excellent. Take advantage of it. Thanks, Danielle. Hey, Alex. All right.
This weekend, United Way is having our Fun Fest. So we took 3 of our activities that we were doing each year and combined them into one weekend of activities. So we have the Family Fun Night, which is pizza and a movie, and then Neil Sauter will be there to teach anybody who wants to come how to build balloon sculptures. He's currently right now filling the Salvation Army gym with a Western Town gigantic balloon sculpture, so people could go hang out in Western Town, go to jail, have a gunfight, whatever. It's really cool. He's been building it all week. Saturday, we'll kick off at 11. We'll have the 1K for United Way, which we had last year. We encourage people to come dressed up in costume and not Fun Fest run, but walk it silly, because there's 3 whole laps for a 1K, because we don't want to overexert ourselves. And every so often, there's a donut stand, just to keep going. So people can complete those laps in whatever silly fashion we're doing in that lap. We're going to have a donut whole spoon race and all kinds of silly things for that. And then the carnival will kick off also at 11, where people can come in and check out all the balloon sculptures at Neal's building. There will be carnival games that are going to be put on by United Way and our partner agencies. There's going to be several food trucks, concessions, just all kinds of things happening on Saturday from 11 to 4. And then Sunday, if you really hated Neal's balloon sculpture, you can come help us destroy it by the balloon popping party at 1 o'clock. Now, everything's happening at the Salvation Army Gym, or in the street behind the Salvation Army Gym. So
On Allison Street.
yeah, Allison, Warehouse, kind of. Yeah, we're mostly on Warehouse, but you can get there by Allison.
Okay, all right. Wow, well, that sounds
Sounds great. And meanwhile, Carol's playing at home, right, Victoria? Should be a good game.
That's a great lead in there, because at that game, before the fun starts, Opportunity Bank will have their tent and a barbecue going that everybody's welcome to participate in. We have hot dogs for people who are bank customers, and then we have non-bank customers. Don't want any bad rumors. No, everybody's welcome. Everybody's welcome. 11 to 1, basically an hour or two before the kickoff. So
Tailgate sort of thing.
yeah, basically tailgate or tailgate, yeah, or barbecue, whatever you want to call it.
All right, very good. Well, thanks, Rick. Thanks to Opportunity Bank. Should be a good game.
Yeah.
John?
I've been here before talking to John Jackson. I'm a member of the Shriners Temple here in Helena. And I've talked to you about the East-West Shrine football game and how Montana is the highest raising state in the nation to raise money for the Shriners hospitals. Our hospital for Montana, of course, is in Spokane. And that hospital supports Montana, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, and Wyoming. I just got a latest report of how we're doing to help children. Now remember, you don't have to be a child who's had maybe a birth issue or whatever. You can be a 17-year-old kid playing football, and we do athletic injuries now also. But outpatient clinics, we do have an outpatient clinic in Kalispell. We're hoping someday to have one here in Helena. So families don't have to travel to Spokane to get care at the Shriners Hospital. But right now, in year-to-date, just Spokane, they have treated 12,000 children, year-to-date, outpatient children. They have done close to 600 outpatient surgeries. We have done about 120 inpatient surgeries, and what's really interesting here, 45 spinal surgeries for young children who have maybe curvature of the spine, etc., what they can do for these young children. So please keep that in mind next year when we have the East-West Shrine football game. It's going to be in Great Falls. We'd like to have everybody, participate, help, contribute, whatever. But a family does not, if a family cannot pay, and they don't have any insurance, we will never turn a child away, never, to give that child the care they need. And that child remains a Shriners kid until they are 18 years of age. They're one of ours, and we'll take care of them up until that time. Now, we do bill insurance, and the family, if they can pay, we need them to pay. But if they can't, it doesn't stop us from caring for that child.
Sure indeed.
Thank you, John. Wow. Dale?
And they do a great job. I know several children that went through that. And one of them, when she turned 18 years old, they asked if they could continue care with her because they had treated her as an infant and they wanted to track how successful they were as she became an adult. So they do great work. What I was going to tell you, we survived another Columbus Day. That's a holiday that's really close to my heart, you know. I'll just say the day the Mayflower arrived. But it's, when we think of that person that discovered America, you know, we've been discovered by so many people, it's ridiculous. And we've always been here. Well, within 100 years into Columbus making it to the Western Hemisphere, 90% of natives no longer existed. On the drainage of the Amazon River in South America, 9 million people no longer existed, and they have never came back. So keep it close in your heart and prayers. Peace in mind.
Very good. Well, we're on the rebound here, Dan.
Yep.
I think natives are the fastest growing segment of the population here in Montana. Is that your understanding? I think that's the case.
Yeah, that's one of the entertainments they can't take away from us.
Well, I heard Columbus was Jewish too. I heard that yesterday. Yeah. And natives are very proportionally represented in the Montana legislature, which I think is some measure of progress over time. I mean, I think natives are roughly 7% of the population, and there's 7 or 8 Native American members of the House of Representatives, and it's similar in the Senate, I think.
You know, and we can thank Jonathan Wendyboy for a lot of that.
Yeah.
He was the first legislator that came and brought staff with him so he could do things. And he did great with the Native American caucus and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he's still out there working hard for natives.
Windy Boys, Carol Juneau, Sharon Stewart Paraguay, Mike Huzz, Frank Smith from Fort Peck. And I've seen those people suffer and struggle at the sessions and been rejected many times, but they keep coming back, and progress has been made. Indian education for all at OPI. Thanks, Senator Dunwell. I was teasing Sheriff Benton a minute ago, but you had some tough duty. Anything you want to say about the Rounds family or the recovery of that young woman? That was just a terrible thing that happened. Yeah, sorry, Will. I know you guys were out there.
Thanks. And, you know, I'm sure we could probably have donut stands every now and again, but for some of you, we could have beer stands and all that kind of stuff, so touche. The search went well, and when I say went well, unfortunately, what we've been able to piece together, the probability of her survival was probably nil. And I haven't shown the GPS track that we were later able to get. And that's why we were able to focus our efforts on the lake. So what I want to say is it was an extremely moving sight to see that many people come out and search for somebody they didn't know. One thing that we had was we needed to try to somewhat keep control, because when they came out, some of the tracks, some of the scent would be gone. So when we go to look for somebody, there was some criticism of why didn't we post it right away. We're trying to piece together a section of history. And if we're going to use scent dogs, if we're going to track the horse, all of those kind of things, if you trample those tracks, we're done. We can't go any further. If you're emotional, which happened, and you threaten to take over the search, we'll leave. We're not in it to fight. We're in it to help out. But by the second or third day, I gotta say the family was great. The family really did a good job. They helped us out by just remaining at a command post and waiting for news they didn't want to hear. The search and rescue people did an admirable job. That was tough duty. So remember, when you have someone go missing, we'll do the same thing to them. Help us out by letting us know as soon as you know. We'll mobilize, go out and look, and put the resources there that we can get a hold of. There were a lot of resources. One gentleman, the first night, put in over 17 miles on his GPS looking for her. That was just one of the search and rescue people. That's the dedication that they have to serve you. So the outcome was already set, but we didn't know that, and we gave it all till the very moment we knew. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Sheriff, and your officers, and the search and rescue guys. It's tough business. There's tragedies in life, and that was sure one. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Peter Sullivan. He's got an announcement, and then we're going to get right into our program, and you'll take it from here. Thank you, Peter. You're on the mend.
Very good. Yeah, I am absolutely on the mend. However, I'm not nearly as good looking as Peter Sullivan. I'm Peter Strauss. You're welcome. I know you, Peter. I'm going to do a fast community announcement as well. I'm on the Farmers Market Board of Directors. We just had one of our board meetings. And we have a grant through the Department of Labor, as do many of the farmers markets around the state, to provide double SNAP benefits. And we got a report of the results so far this year. We're still open. We're going to be open until October 25th. So come on down. We still have fresh produce and fruits, as well as all the arts and crafts and jewelry. But we are about a third higher in providing those SNAP benefits this year than we were last year. And last year was darn close to a record year. So we're feeding many more people in the area. So, thank you.
Good to hear from you.
So, we've invited all of the candidates to join us on Thursday mornings. And we've invited the local candidates to make some presentations. But the statewide candidates we invite to just say hello, tell us a little bit about themselves and what they're running for and why they're running. Today we're fortunate to have two people who are running for statewide office, Aaron Ferris Olson and John Repke. And I'm going to ask Aaron to come up first and give
Thank you so much, Peter, and thank you all. Apologies for those of you who've kind of heard a bit of my spiel already. I'm lucky enough to be a Helena resident for 24 and some years now, and if anybody's kind of sick of politics, you can blame Jim Smith. He was my adjunct professor at Carroll College. Got my young wheels turning about how I could be part of the action someday. So, my name is Aaron Ferris Olson. I'm running for clerk of the Montana Supreme Court. The clerk of the Montana Supreme Court is unique here in Montana. It's an independent office, and that's by design, dating back to our 1889 Constitution. And the purpose was really to provide public transparency for what was a very non-transparent judicial process back in the 1800s. And so our office, although it's really administrative, for those of you who don't know, the clerk processes all of the filings before the Montana Supreme Court, and everything appealed. We don't have an intermediate appellate court, and we don't grant certiorari like the U.S. Supreme Court. Everything filed before the Montana Supreme Court is reviewed by the court. So all of those filings go through the clerk of court's office. I'm a licensed attorney. I'm a mother of two. I worked as a law clerk for the Montana Supreme Court, so I have done those reviews of filings before and looked at where they comply and don't comply with the rules of civil procedure. And the purpose of that is really to ensure that the court can make an unbiased, objective review of those filings. It gets down into the weeds as much as fonts and margins, because the way a case appears can influence the way you receive it. I'm sure you've all gotten political ads in your mailboxes, and you've seen the difference of colors and fonts and things. And so those are the types of things that are being essentially regulated and managed at the clerk's level. You also manage a lot of records with district courts all across the state. Each county is almost its own, it is its own jurisdiction, but there's different processes that courts have across the state too. So when those all end up clerk's office, sometimes there's some problem solving to do. So it's really important to manage relationships with clerks of court, with judges, with the legal community across the state. I worked for the Montana Supreme Court as well as the Court Health Program Administrator, so I supported all of the district courts across the state in managing self-represented litigants. Self-represented litigants are the #1 demand on court staff time statewide, and that's at the Supreme Court level as well. And so you've probably had a lot of information about the court justices. The clerk does not have any decision-making authority. It's administrative. But it's also very important because, as we say, justice delayed is justice denied. And what, across political divides, people have been able to agree on is court efficiency. And I've been able to work on those issues, both for the court, for the state bar, with Montana Legal Services Association. And that's what I would spend my time working on as the clerk of the Montana Supreme Court. What really inspires me to run for this position is the way that politics is getting more and more inserted into our court system. And there's a lot of press about all these high-level constitutional decisions that the court's making, and that's important. But also what's important is how the court actually serves communities. There was a workload study done about court time a few years back. And Lewis and Clark County is one of the most burdened courts across the state, and yet we still don't have additional, what has been assigned in like Missoula and Bozeman are standing masters or positions that can process cases more quickly. Those cases that affect our community members directly. Parenting issues. When are people going to see their kids next? Landlord-tenant, are they going to be able to stay in their apartment? Are their wages going to be garnished? There's a lot of consumer protection claims that come through our courts. And though that's the meat and potatoes of court administration, that's the backbone of our communities, and that's what I am most passionate about. So like I said, it's a position that dates all the way back to 1889. It's been partisan since then. I don't actually believe this is a partisan position at all. And so I've spent my career working across political divides on what issues matter to all Montanans. So I'd be committed to court efficiency, to access to justice, and to improving the court system. So I want to thank you all for hearing from me yet again. Thank you for creating this space, Ann and Dan and Haley and Jim and Peter and others. One thing that I've learned just being a statewide candidate is how difficult it is to have community forums like this and how unique hometown Helena is to Helena. I'm super proud to be a Helenan and super proud to be able to come and participate in this forum. So thank you. I also have, as I mentioned, have 2 young kids, so my attendance might waver, but I really appreciate those of you that show up week after week to maintain this forum for all of us to be informed.
Thank you very much. Next, John Repke, running for Commissioner Securities and Insurance, State Auditor's Office. Tell me what that's about.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you for having me. Some of you may remember me from a couple of years ago when I ran for Public Service Commission. I attended some hometown Helenas, and I learned a couple of things. One is that you don't, well, I guess I learned one thing, you don't speak after Sheriff Dutton. You're never going to, live up to it. Now I find out that you also don't want to speak after Aaron. I'm running for state auditor, and as Peter said, it's also called the Commissioner of Securities and Insurance. The primary function is insurance regulation. And I'm running for this office for the same reason that I ran for Public Service Commission. I have had a 40-year career in corporate finance. I have experience tackling complex financial problems, and I want to bring that expertise and that skill set to this state and give the voters a chance to elect someone like myself. Now, as Erin said, my office, she mentioned that her office probably shouldn't be partisan. I would say the same thing about the insurance regulator. In fact, in 39 states, the insurance regulator is an appointed nonpartisan position. In Montana, we elect our insurance commissioner or our state auditor in a partisan race. And that's fine, but I think the voters need to have a chance to elect someone that has the same skill set as the regulators in other states. This is the person that's representing you to make sure that you have access to all forms of insurance at affordable rates. I will promise to staff the office with qualified professionals who can make a true contribution every day. I will work the entire 4 years. I won't run for another office. Someone asked me if there were term limits, and I said, well, my term limits are biological. But I will be there the whole 4 years without running for any other office except for possibly re-election in the same one. So I will work hard for you. To be completely fair, I should say the other reason I'm running is to give me an excuse to move to Helena. Because every time I come to hometown Helena and hear all the great things that are happening in your community, and just seeing this group talk about these things together, I really do think highly of Helena, and it would be a great place to live. So anyway, thank you. John Repke, candidate for state auditor, I hope I can get your vote.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Eric. And thanks, too, to all of our elected officials. We are extraordinarily lucky in this area in the quality of people who are willing to put themselves out to run for office, let alone actually get elected and do the work for us. So I want to thank you. So this is the last of our scheduled candidate forums. All the candidates that are running in the state have been invited to join us. We didn't exclude anybody for any office. And we specifically, since this is such a heavy election year, we specifically wanted to focus on the local races for hometown Helena. Before we start, I'd like to provide you a quote from one of my favorite quote makers. This guy was so prolific. Winston Churchill. Democracy means that when there's a knock at the door at 3 a.m., it's probably the milkman. We forget that sometimes. With that, we're going to have Eric Dietrich with Montana Free Press, Joe Dooling, who's running for Lewis and Clark County Commissioner, as well as Andy Hunthausen, making some presentations for us today. So I'm going to start off with Eric. I'm going to talk to you about the constitutional initiatives 126, 127, and 128. Eric Dietrich.
Got some quick slides here. I'm going to try to run through this relatively quickly so we can hear from Andy and Joe. They're probably more interesting than I am with my flow charts up there. But I've been asked to kind of keep this to a relatively factual overview of what the initiatives do. If you want to hear me try to summarize pro and con arguments in a fair, nonpartisan way before 8 a.m., ask. Otherwise? Okay. Can you hear me now? Am I? Okay. Great. So first off, so the first two initiatives, say 126 and 127, are kind of a pairing that deal with how our election system works for most statewide and federal offices. There are a few races that would be excluded from these. We can talk about those details. Let's talk about them kind of sequentially. First is 126, which changes how our the June primary elections work. And under the current system, as I think most of us know, right, we have party-based primaries. They're technically open primaries, in that any voter can kind of choose to vote a Republican or the Democratic or the Libertarian or the Green Party primaries, just whatever ballots get. If you're a mail ballot voter, you get like all the ballots mailed to you. You pick which one to send in. So we have an open, in that sense, primary system, but candidates do kind of have to choose which party primary they're going to run in. And then the way the party primaries work is, of course, people vote, and the person with most votes for that party moves on to the general. An example I have up on the screen here is the Eastern District race from this year, our congressional district out here, where we had a bunch of Republican candidates, and Troy Downey picked up enough votes to advance, and then the Democratic primary where John Driscoll was not, I think, is he here today? Not here, thank God, I can say things. Well,
We're not being recorded right now.
I mean, we are. One of the fun things about being a journalist, right, you say something dumb in public and you get dragged on Twitter. right? So, anyway, but I think most of us are pretty familiar with how the current system works. Right. And then the next slide is how things would work under CI 126 if that passes. And essentially create a single aggregate multi-party primary, and the top 4 vote getters out of that primary would advance. But hypothetical, I just took the vote counts from the Eastern District primary from this year, so we kind of see what could have happened there. I know the faces on that screen are a little small, probably nobody could read the names, but just kind of assuming people would have voted the same way that they did, which is probably not a good assumption. In terms of like what would we have on the ballot this fall if we had CI 126 in effect for the Eastern District, Downey and Bristol would advance, along with kind of the other top 3 Republicans who've been, oh gosh, I can't even read their names in there. Stacey Zinn and Denny Reaper will both be on the fall ballot this year. So that kind of gives you a sense for like, and then, so you have then the top 4 in this race. I mean, if a Libertarian candidate got in there too, they would be on the top 4 working Libertarian candidates in the Eastern District this year, or Green Party candidates. This is how things work under CI 126. So basically, the argument there is that in some cases, I guess I have to sometimes pros and cons, right? The argument we hear from proponents for this, as I understand it, Lauren will probably correct me if it isn't like this explanation, is that in some cases, party primaries kind of become like a gatekeeping thing, right? Yeah, okay. Oh my gosh. Did I need to say anything over again? No, thank you. Thank God. So in some cases, party primaries can be a gatekeeping thing, right? If you have a heavily Republican district, like say the Eastern Congressional District, right, the winner of that race is probably the winner of the Republican primary. And so, barring some extraordinarily unpredictable thing happening. And so the argument is that in that kind of Democratic primary, you kind of get disenfranchised. In a lot of legislative races, in particular, sometimes like it comes down to primary fights between hardline Republican candidates and more moderate Republican candidates. And if we see political dynamics play out, for example, like somebody who's not a Republican in the legislature votes to renew Medicaid expansion, and got to tie that in, and then is subject to a primary challenge that provides political pain for that vote. And that primary in a Republican-leaning district will decide, basically decide who's elected to the legislature. The argument here is that this would shift potentially the meaningful decision in elections to the November general election, as opposed to having elections decided in the June primary. And of course, if you're somebody who likes the current system and likes that party that, say you're a hardline Republican, and like that can, that current system gives your wing of the party the ability to have an influence, you perhaps don't like this. And also, it's changing elections at a time when there's a lot of scrutiny over elections. That's 126. Let's move on. 127 would be a majority vote requirement for the general election. It's essentially a companion measure. The way it's been described to me is basically you have 4 candidates in the general, right? And if you don't have a majority, currently whoever gets the most votes wins, right, in the general, right? If you have 4 candidates and all of them are competitive in the general, you could potentially end up with kind of interesting situations, right? Like hypothetical here, you have a third of the votes going to the Democratic candidate, and if you have 3 Republicans, perhaps they split the vote, and you could end up with a situation where, say, the Democrat wins, even though they get a third of the general election vote. Hypothetical, right? Who knows what would actually play out like this? You could game out all sorts of possibilities, but I think this does kind of make it a little bit tangible, right? So CI 127 would be a way to ensure that you don't get weird results out of the top 4 nonpartisan general that would be produced by 126. And instead of what happened in a situation where no candidate in the November general wins an outright majority, is the legislature would have to set up a process for what happens. The 2 big ideas in circulation are 1, would be ranked choice voting like they do in Alaska, or 2, a runoff election like they do in Georgia. Or we could see what else, who knows what sort of sauce we get out of the legislature. Right? That will become, if this passes, that will become a big deal discussion next winter. I think that's about the summary of that. Let's move on. 128. I think this one is, sorry for the text on the screen, nobody can probably read unless you've got very young eyes. CI 128, I think most folks know that, that's a constitutional right to abortion. Currently, the way that Montana courts have interpreted the right of privacy in the Constitution, through the Armstrong precedent, that protects abortion access in Montana in most situations. And that's the precedent you see cited when the courts strike down anti-abortion laws that have been passed by the legislature in recent years. The CI 128 would go a step further and explicitly enshrine that right in the Montana Constitution. Just to read the text here, there is a right to make and carry out decisions about one's own pregnancy, including the right to abortion. This right should not be denied a burden unless justified by a compelling government interest achieved by the least restrictive means. I'm not an attorney. I can't tell you how the courts would interpret that language. I'm sure that we would see this litigated because of course this is one of the most divisive issues in our society. 128, right, is being advanced by folks that are abortion rights advocates and resisted by folks that tend to not think that abortion is good and think that perhaps it should be banned. The con arguments I'm seeing, I think, revolve around, like, would this go too far, perhaps? Would this create unintended consequences? Generally, the challenge with constitutional initiatives, right, is they're very hard to change. That's either a bug or a feature, depending on how much you trust the state legislature. So that is the kind of the way that people tend to talk about, are these good ideas or not, right? Like we write this in our Constitution, it's basically etched into legal stone. If it turns out these ideas have some flaws in them, they're hard to change in the future, but they're also protected from perhaps meddling by the legislature, if that's the way you think about the legislature. That's, I think, all I have. You want to do questions?
We'll do questions after.
Great, okay.
We'll do questions after the two candidates come up, and all questions are welcome. So with that, we go in alphabetical order. With that, Joe Dooling, come on up. Joe is running for the Lewis and Clark County Commissioner office. Thanks for being here, Joe.
Thanks, Peter. Sometimes being in hometown hall is hard for me because I do miss my mornings with Brian Kahn a lot, actually. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late. And it's got high correlation to why we're here today because I bought some heifers about 4 years ago, and very good friend of mine, 30 years friend of mine. So they're good cattle, good disposition, no problem working in the corral, and they're bred to a low birth weight, the easy calving. Well, anyways, I was pulling the fourth calf. They kicked my hand, kicked the end of my finger off. And so I find it hard to button my shirt, so I was a little bit slow getting here. And the correlation there is don't take anybody's, between what we're doing here today, don't take anybody's word for it. Go and take a look at things before you buy them. So that's what my correlation. The story was funnier on the way into town. So, my dog loved it. So, you guys aren't looking for campaign, you guys are a sophisticated crowd. You're not looking for campaign speeches about who's endorsing, endorsed by the Tire Association, small business builders, all sorts of things. So what I'm going to do is something a little bit different. I thought about this, and I spent a lot of time by myself with my tractor. And so I thought, what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a couple stories from the paper that involved the county and how I would have handled that as a county commissioner. So you get a difference between it. One is the Canyon Creek Fire Department. That should have never gotten as exploded as it has. And so if I was a county commissioner, I would have been out there right away, first time the sheriff was called out to the meeting. Because people expect two things when I'm out going door to door. They expect to be safe, and they expect to have a roof above. And I don't think there's very many people that live in the Canyon Creek Fire District right now that feel that that's a smooth running machine now, that they're going to have their house saved. And so, Commissioner Payne bragged just 2 years ago how she had such a great relationship with the Grady's when we replaced Zach Worth and Becky Beer's house seat. That if I was Andy Hausen, the commissioner, I would ask her to go out there, it's her district, and see if she can calm these things down, because the head guy there, Rick Brady, is a hard-headed individual, and that's being kind, right, sir? They tried to diffuse this, and we needed to have that diffused a long time ago, and I never let it get this far. Second thing I would do, I would ask our county attorney to put together a one page on what is a conflict of interest. There's a whole bunch of issues about husband and wife on boards, that conflict of interest. Well, conflicts of interest oftentimes vary on who the attorney is, right? And so our county attorney will have one page on on our website, the county website, so that people can go and see what the conflict of interest is and what the open meeting laws are, so that things don't fester for months and months and months. That's how I would approach that. And if I know the Grady's well, 20 years as well, I would have gone out there and tried to diffuse it. Let it go this long isn't right. That's how I would handle it. It's been my life trying to solve solutions. The second one is the roundabout, the fairgrounds, and the design of Lake Helena. These are a complete waste of money. We're going to about 90% design. The county doesn't have the money for it. So these things are going to go on the shelf. And 10 years down the road, when we get a grant or something, we're going to call up the engineering firm, say, hey, we're ready to go. They're going to say, because I know this because I did it for 15 years. They're going to say, oh, so-and-so doesn't work here anymore. We're going to need to go back out there and redesign it. And you say, well, you got to have a design to know what you're going to go for a grant. I got the biggest port in Montana, which is in Shelby. We got a $10 million Tiger grant, basically drawn on the back of a cocktail napkin from the Dixie Inn. Meaning you can go with 10% design to get grants. We did it all the time. Don't need to go this far. They're out there surveying, they're staking stuff. And 4 or 5 years from now, things are going to be different. We're going to have to redo it all. Meanwhile, we have bridges on Applegate, Green Meadow. The fire engines can't safely cross. Again, back to priorities that people want. They want to be safe, and they want to have the roads plowed. So I would say,
That means you've got like 2 minutes left.
oh,
Is that right, Rick?
Yes.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. I won't even get to my third one, so I'll just leave it at that. I ran mostly because our property taxes have gotten way out of control. Our spending's way out of control. We're up 40% more than the rate of, or we're up 20% more than the rate of inflation and population growth. And the trigger that put me over the top was when my mom, 81 years old, got an $8,000 property tax bill. She has, I'd have a conversation with her about how to sell, she might have to move out. She starts crying. We can do better. We can do more with less. And that's what I run.
Thank you, Joe. Andy Hunthausen is also running for the Lewis and Clark County Commissioner. Andy is the incumbent. Andy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good to see everyone. I start as always, and my mother made sure that this was important for all of us. But it's about gratitude, and I'm really grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be at hometown. I'm grateful to live in a community like this, and I'm grateful to be able to serve you in this office as well as run for this seat. So thank you very much, and I just feel a great sense of gratitude. I want to do something different as well, so I'll copycat Joe a little bit in that we were interviewed, I think each of us were interviewed by a young KTVH reporter the other day, and one of the questions she asked me at the end, anything you wanted to talk about that people don't know about, some piece of trivia or something like that. And though the Hunthausen name is fairly well known in the Helena area, I don't know that I've ever really told my story that much. So just very quickly, I am 7th of 9 children. I grew up in East Helena. I was born at St. John's Hospital, the old St. John's building, and grew up in the same house in East Helena for my entire life. My parents were married 66 years, and both of them, my mother died at age 90, my father at 93. And I'm so proud of them and my brothers and sisters. My parents, my father was a teacher, my mother was a nurse for the first 3 and then stayed home. And all 9 children graduated from college. 6 of the 9 have graduate degrees. And all of that was done with their own initiative and encouragement for our parents. We didn't have any money, so we had to do it ourselves. And I'm just so grateful that I grew up in a family like that. We still connect. We have a WhatsApp group, and my brothers and sisters will probably be hitting me up soon, so we're connected that way. And my father, on my father's side, I have 39 first cousins. And 3 of the 7 kids of my father's brothers and sisters, 3 of them went religious, as we said. There's 2 priests and a nun. And his oldest brother, Ray, was the president of Carroll College. He taught and coached there, chemistry. And then he became the bishop of Western Montana, and then the Archbishop of Seattle. And so you see Hunthausen Way on Carroll, you see there's a building named after him. And many of my brothers and sisters, uncles and aunts, cousins, of course, attended Carroll and have had a great history at Carroll. So just a little bit of that history for you, and gratitude. I want to say a couple of things. Lusakaar County has 10 elected officials, and I want to point out Sheriff Dutton. It's really important that we understand how it works, and I think there's some misunderstanding. But I'm really grateful to work with Sheriff Dutton. We don't agree all the time, but we have a working relationship, and we have to have a working relationship with all the other elected officials. We have to work together to try and make the county function in a proper way. One of the, we'll move back here, one of the things that in relation to electeds, people have sometimes a misunderstanding about how things work, so just a little bit of education. I left information on your tables. I'm trying to hit the highlights here so we don't have much time, but I left information on your tables, and there's several did you know, and it's about how elected official salaries happen, how property taxes work, and a little bit about some of the other things that happen in the county in terms of budgeting and those kinds of things. So we, in terms of property taxes, are only allowed to raise taxes 1/2 of the last 3 years' average inflation rate. So we are a subdivision of the state of Montana. The state of Montana tells us, you've heard over the last 3-4 weeks, about the elected officials from the state. They've taken responsibility that really tax reform has to happen at the state of Montana, has to happen at the legislature. We are subject to their rules and how taxes work. So we don't have that much flexibility about how to raise or lower taxes locally. So people talk about, geez, the county needs to do something about my taxes. We really can only raise them 1/2 of the last 3 years' average inflation rate. So that's half inflation. It doesn't even keep up with inflation that we have as well. Grader a few years ago cost a couple $100,000, now it's $400,000 or $500,000. So we're working on all of those issues that I'm trying to think of highlights. I have gratitude for the League of Women Voters. They invited us to have a forum. There's a sheet there that they asked several questions about why you want to run. I want to run for this office because I love my community. Again, gratitude. I have been in this position for 18 years now, and I am so grateful to be there. The last thing I'll say is that we have a lot to do. The commission has goals. We have a growth policy that we've just reopened. We have subdivision regulations we just reopened, and we have staff that we need to support fully. We have, I want to be an employer of choice where we have staff that is not only supported, but we have them well trained and valued. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
We're going to open it for questions. Andy, do you have the microphone? Very good. So Andy will run around. I'm going to take the prerogative as the host and ask the first question. And Eric, what happens if 126 and 127 don't both pass? So if we pass one or the other, but not both.
It is, it's all your fault.
All my fault, okay. So if one or the other pass, right, so there are a couple different combinations, right? The rules of one would take effect and the other one wouldn't, is I think the way it worked. My understanding is there isn't a both have to pass. I do think, my understanding is, Lauren, please correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is the backers initially wanted to advance these as a single initiative, combined, but kind of had to separate it because we had a single subject rule, with like too much together in the same ballot question. But yeah, I think probably the more likely possibility there is that 126 would pass and 127 wouldn't. I hear people talking about this, and that means you would have top 4 primaries and somebody could win with 35% of the vote. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Senator Dunlop? I'm going to ask you to limit it to the question.
I will.
Thank you so much.
I won't go there with why I support all 3 initiatives. The first 2 being 126, 127 being that we need to do something about our polarization in our division, and this is a great path forward to return to our Montana that we know and love. I mean, we still know and love it, but it's just some of the hate and ugliness is getting dangerous, frankly. So my question is this for Eric, editor of the Montana Free Press. First of all, thank you for all you do, but I won't say that. I'll ask a question. So I'm getting some calls from constituents, and oftentimes I forward the questions to the people behind the initiatives who just have done all the research and really know the backstory. So one of the big questions is skepticism to leave part of 127 up to the legislature, and you know, can't the legislature go rogue and just do something like put this off for 20 years or some, you know, effective date in 2050, something like that? My response is simply, well, there are lots of sideboards. So I wonder if you could go deeper than that, and what are those sideboards?
So the answer is no, I can't go deeper. I'm going to pass the mic back to somebody else. I can't answer that in a way that's not yes.
Is that really close? Thanks, Eric. So again, Lauren Caldwell, campaign manager for 126 and 127, so not an unbiased source of information here, and I would be happy to talk to any of you at length afterward, because I know this forum's, you know, limited time, but I heard a lot of people say, you know, they're constitutional. I really care about the Montana Constitution. Is it right to open that up? And I just want to say, you know, we changed our Constitution a number of times when it suits the will of the people, when it's something that actually makes the Constitution better for Montanans. And so, in terms of the legislature, it's not that we are giving the legislature authority. The legislature already has a lot of authority and has exercised that authority over election processes. We are constraining the authority of the legislature through the Constitution. The fact that these are constitutional is extraordinarily important because it actually constrains the authority that they have at the legislative level to implement the systems. I think Eric's explanation of what could come from those implementations is accurate, but it's not like the legislature has some expanded or outsized ability to do something that is otherwise unconstitutional. So they cannot actually do a number of the things that come to people's minds. They can't choose the winners. They can't do what you know, push it off forever. We are, as a people, reclaiming the policy as our own by putting it in the Constitution.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any questions for the county commissioners? Joe, go for it.
I'm just stepping up as
Really close.
John Q. citizen.
Even closer.
I got to know John when he was running for PSC, and this guy's worthy of look at. He's super intelligent, one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. He's met right away, and I was like, this guy's really smart. So glad you're running.
Thank you.
Glad you're doing that. So I, surprise, disagree with Mary Ann Dunwell on these 3 initiatives. I don't support anything that's not very good. I don't believe citizen passed initiatives are that great of an idea. But see, the 127, when we have runoff elections are highly expensive, and it's hard enough for our county to put on elections as it is. We're going to have runoff elections. Speaker of the House won't be decided until probably Christmas time. Those kind of things are very dangerous. So while the process is somewhat broken in the primary, but not everything is a fix. I think my good friend Kim Smith once said that just because it's bad, just don't come up with a new idea to think it's better. So I would encourage you to go down all these initiatives and start with the legislation to do this process.
Behind you, Jeff.
Eric, you're up.
I have a question for the county commission candidates. So since I moved to Helena 5 years ago, I've seen the cost of housing in this town about double. And I'm curious, like, as you think about staffing the county and making sure that the right people are in place to make the various programs there work, and of course, trying to figure out how to keep property taxes lower and lower. How are you thinking about balancing paying the ultimate cost of living for county employees with, of course, being fiscally prudent with the budget?
Happy to start there. Thank you for the question. Housing costs are a huge issue, and what we've done with county employees is we've tried to stay competitive as we can in the market. So every other year we do a market survey. Actually, the last few years we've been doing it every year, a market survey comparing like positions to those in the city, state positions, and what the cost of living allowance is or cost of living index is. And we've been trying to keep up with that the best that we can. It's very difficult. We haven't been able to keep up with the full inflation rate in terms of salary increases. It's challenging with the amount of funding we have or the ability to increase our taxes because we can only do half of the inflation rate. And then we do have growth, which is one of those things that really helps. In terms of housing, the parts that we have control over, or some control over, or don't have control over, we don't have control over the market, of course. We don't have control over what the state's role is with the assessments of your property, and then the tax process and tax rules are a state function. They tell us what tax we are the tax collector. But some of the things that we're doing right now, we are trying to rewrite our growth policy, rewrite our subdivision regulations so that they're more compatible with growth. We know that we need to get more units on the ground. How do we do that? So we've looked at lots of different options. Our ARPA money we invested in Habitat for Humanity, helped them buy the property out there. We've invested in both East Allen and Holland infrastructure type funding. We have worked with several of our nonprofits to try and help in that regard to get more units on the ground. We know that we have to do that.
Thank you. Joe? So you guys all know I'm a Bobcat. So for me to quote the Grizz is a tough thing, but University of Montana's School of Economic Research, 50% of housing costs are due to local regulation. That's their number now. So when the county passes zoning on 250,000 acres, 30,000 acres of federal land, 3 state sections they couldn't zone if they wanted to, 10-acre minimums, with 99.9% opposition. The only person that was supportive of this is Price, Mary Ann Dunwell. This is why our housing is through the road. 10 acre, who in the world thinks 10 acres is cheaper than a 1 acre? So that's the problem we have. It's local regulation has caused this problem, and we need to have a better solution to this problem. I am a farmer. Nothing makes me more pissed off than to see a farm ground cut into houses. So we need to have a plan. It doesn't go after the farm ground. It goes off the ground, it's wasted. The grasshoppers couldn't even live on, put houses there. That's where the solution is. But I'm here to tell you, 30–40% of the problem is due to local regulation. That's what our problem is.
Barb, do you identify something?
No, but somebody over there had, the guy
Oh, Bill.
he didn't have the thing on, but he had his hand up. I don't know.
Yeah, Bill, do you have a question?
Does he have a question?
Phil, do you have a question? We are at time. So, before I give you this, I'm going to do my Churchill quote. Because it's time for another Churchill quote. Thank you very much for everybody. 11 November 1947, so appreciate the time. Democracy is the world's worst form of government until compared to all the others. So, Jim, thank you.
All right. Well, we packed a lot into an hour around here. Thank you very much for being here and staying with us. Peter, thanks. Nice job with all of our candidates. John, you ran the clicker for a while. Thank you, sir. Mr. Repke, thank you. Miss Ferris Olson, you were a great student. Thank you very much. And Joe and Andy, good job, both you guys, both you gentlemen. What else? What else we got? Anybody? Skip it. Eric, yeah, thank you very much. That was as good and succinct and helpful an explanation of those two initiatives as I've seen. That follows right along with your work on Medicaid expansion and reform last year. So, I'm not sure what Aiden's got back in the canteen. Something good, no doubt. Check it out. Lights are on, yes, Lee. The lights are on. Anything as we